Show my ID calculator and
trust
matches.
Ayumi Love? Do we trust Ayumi Love 6 years after the
no.
last update?
No.
No.
It moves,
Attack?
Do they even have hypersets in there?
It doesn't say either one being flat on fandom. Does MapleWiki have it? Oh, Strategy Wiki should have it.
You just
The hyperstat calculator is telling
Oh,
me I
strength
lose.
increase final strength stat, so then the attack should say whether it's flat or not.
You lose damage with the.
Oh,
with
it says
the
affected by
power?
percent increasing. Okay, so it's not
Yeah.
final.
Yeah, okay.
It still
like-
should be worse than damage, though.
Yeah.
If I put 12 into Arcane Force, my calculator says I lose 2% final damage, but I'll gain 10, so pretty work.
I'm not a math genius, but I think that means you gain 8.
Yes. Yes.
Is it? I don't think so, right? If
Minus
you lose
2
2
plus
and then
10?
yeah, I don't think that's 8.
I gotta check it on Nerdle. Give me a sec.
Okay.
Because if you start with 100%, you lose 2, then you go to 98, and then you gain 10% final damage of that. So you go to 109.7, right? So you gain 9.7%.
Doesn't matter. It's all multiplicative, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
No,
it's
no,
multiplicative.
no. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. If you lose 2% of your final damage, your new damage is 98% of your old damage. And then if you gain 10% final damage on that, then you gain 10% on
No,
what
then
is
you,
98%
if you gain
of your total
10%
damage.
damage on that, then you gain 2% that you lost, and then 8 more on top of it.
Yeah, that's
No,
not how it works,
no,
because
you gain
it
10% of your
cal-
damage
it
at that
calculates
point.
It, no, but
Yeah.
sorry, it calculates it based off the base again. It doesn't
Yeah,
go
it's
minus
not
2
based
then
off what.
plus
It's not
10.
like IED where it uses your previous number.
It just looks at the base and adds, instead of
Yeah.
130%,
What one
that's
final
100
damage
and-
is always 101 damage of what you currently do.
yeah, always.
That's why it's final damage.
Yeah, but if you lose 2% final damage and then you gain 2% final damage again, then you have less damage than you did before.
No.
Yes.
A multiplicative percentage. That's not how it works.
Yeah, that's not how the math works. It's multiplicative, so it doesn't matter.
Your base damage. So let's say you have 102.
Okay,
final
but
damage.
that's because you're saying because wait, who said it? He said he lost 2% final damage. That's not a source of final damage. He's losing 2% of his damage is what he's losing. He's not losing a source of 2% final damage. Right?
Yeah, but the stat that he's losing is equal to a
Yeah,
source
you
of
just
2%.
put
Yeah,
it into
yeah, exactly. It's
calculator.
equal to that, but it's not a final damage percentage. So what you're saying doesn't apply here.
Well, it is. You're just
Uh,
converting. You're converting
no,
the
no,
5
no,
or
no,
6
'cause-
variables that are in play
Yeah,
all
no.
into one for comparison's sake. So it is functionally a source of 2% FD. Otherwise, all the calculators are useless.
Well, we
If the calculator
translated
that
to final
outputs-
damage so that we know how big of a damage we're losing.
Yeah, but,
Yeah, but-
if the calculator that outputs it into final damage doesn't actually give you the value in final damage,
No,
then it
because-
hasn't calculated it in final damage.
How would you think MapleStory calculates your gains then, if it doesn't
Yeah.
transfer them to final then?
Well, I mean, the damage formula is on MapleWiki also.
Well, it
but-
translates to
yeah,
your
but-
total damage that you're doing, no?
Yeah, but
Your
that's
your
also-
final damage, quote unquote, in a calculator is not the stat final damage at all. That has nothing to do with each other. But we call them both
I mean,
final
it's,
damage.
No, no.
It's just
True.
every other source of damage multiplied by your
calculates-
final damage.
Yeah,
Your 100%,
exactly.
your
But not
base
final damage.
100% is calculated using
Mhm.
all your stats.
Yeah.
If you lose a certain percentage of your base 100% and you gain a higher percentage, you just gain the difference.
So
Yeah.
the final damage number at the end is the final variable in an equation that the multiplicative identity is applied to. So the order doesn't functionally matter, but it's a big equation times your final damage. When your final damage goes up, your damage number at the end goes up. The
Yeah.
left half of that equation is also just getting multiplied. So if that increases by 2%, it is identical to the number on the right half of the multiplicative identity increasing by 2%. So if your damage prior to final damage multiplier being applied goes up 2%, that is functionally identical to gaining 2% final damage stat and not gaining that blob of whatever that you just calculated.
Yes.
That's just like how the multiplicative identity works. So then if you lose the 2% from the left half, and you gain the 10 on the right half, you still just gained 8.
You know
That's
what
just
I think?
math.
You guys are nerds.
You know, I agree, but I like it. You can make me feel bad about being a nerd. Fuck you, JHK.
I still don't think it's true.
I mean, you gotta
No, I don't
take
think-
it up with
Doesn't
whatever.
matter, it's math.
You gotta
I think
take
that's
it up
true.
with the chamber of math in your country or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe- it's not up
This
to
is
me.
how math works.
I
This is fine.
didn't make the multiplicative identity and
Disagree to disagree. It's
ancient
like
Greek-
a 0.2%
You
final
can't
damage.
agree
Okay,
to
let me
disagree.
let me ask you this, okay? So with the recent, because you'll probably say this then as well, which I don't think is true either. With like the Kaiser, or I don't remember what class it was. There was a class that went from like a 10% final damage buff to a 15% final damage buff, and people were saying like, oh, they gain 5% final damage, but that's not true, right? Because they gain 5%, 5 percentage point final damage, not 5% final damage.
What does the skill do? Does the skill?
Is
give
it 5%
yeah,
on their
5%
buff
damage
window or
instantly?
5% of a damage of a skill?
So it was a final damage buff that said plus 10%, but it became 15 instead.
Then they gain 5.
That
gain
is
5%
5% final damage.
They
That's
gain
how the math
5% final
works.
damage, yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
agree.
just yeah.
I play a class that's final damage based. I can show you in my stats.
But it's not. It's
Final-
it's 5 percentage point final damage because it's onto a source that already exists. Getting
Doesn't matter.
it works.
Well,
It
doesn't
does
matter.
matter. It does
A
matter.
source of 15 and a source of 10 and 5 are identical. It's not calculated like IED. It's calculated additively.
Yeah, you add up all the final damage and multiply at the end. Like you don't
Yeah.
multiply
No,
it doesn't-
final damage
No,
on
no, no,
top
no,
of
no, no, whoa. Every final damage source is calculated separately, but they're all multiplicative. That's why Cadenas and Heroes can get to 600% final damage, self-buffed. Because they're all multiplicative. If I get a source of 30% final damage, I go to 130%. If I get another source of 60% final damage, I get 60% above, so 130% times 160. That's total final damage when it ends.
Every time you gain 1% final damage, your theoretical BA should go up to 101% of what it was before.
Yeah.
Because final
Every
damage is
source
always
final
worth
damage,
it's always worth whatever percent of your current damage. So if you do 100 trill now and you get 1% FD, you should do 101 trill. And if you get another 1% on top of that, then you should do what 10.
So how can you say they're all-
or
Should be
whatever?
slightly more because it's multiplicative.
Yeah. I'm saying so. Then if you get another 1% when you're at 101, you end up at like 102.1 and change or whatever.
But what you're saying is that if you have one source of 20% final damage, that's the same as you have 20 sources of 1%?
Yeah, that's correct.
That can't be true.
That's not
That's
true.
why it's final damage. That's how final damage works. It's
No,
different
but
than
if you-
sources
if
of
you-
IED.
that's how multiplicative percentages work. That's just how it goes. It doesn't care what the number at
But
that
no,
moment
'cause it's
is.
one.
It just,
So the way that
100% is 1.01 times your damage, right? And then you do that again times 1.01.
yeah. So what you're doing
20
is you're
times.
But you
versus just
compound it,
adding
no?
20%. It's not the same.
no, yeah, that's true. If you add 20 source of 1% final damage, you don't get 20% final damage.
yeah no
That's
no
how it
you'd
works.
have to add the right number of
Yeah, exactly. So if you have a
log-
10 and a 5, that's not the same as 15, because what I said is just a more extreme version of the thing. Is that you're
No,
splitting
it
up
is
the
the
sources.
same.
No, but you just
No,
agree
if you
that
have
it's
a 10 and
not.
a 5, that's more than 15.
Yeah,
I think in
exactly.
the calculator, it's the same because it works off the same base, but not.
No, okay. So you just agreed, right? That if you add 5% onto a source of 10, that's not as
Yeah.
good as you
But
have.
the calculator
Oh.
does it based on assuming you didn't lose that damage to begin with.
But you already
No, but
had it.
This where this
Yeah,
started.
no,
is
that-
the
that-
number changed.
yeah,
The base
whoever said
100% changed.
mathematically 1.01 to the 20th does not equal 1.2. That's true. It's way
Yeah.
better.
Exactly. So if you have already
In this
10%,
case, probably
but your 10% final damage skill goes to 15, you're not gaining 5% final damage compared to the damage that you were doing. You're gaining 5% final damage as like the stat final damage went up by 5%. Yes, but you're gaining 5 percentage points in final damage, not 5% in final damage compared to how much damage your character is doing before the change. That's what I'm
except
talking
that
about.
The damage formula is just the entire. Like I'm trying to look it up just to like read you the word for word. But
Yeah, you gain like
the
4.5.
The very last multiplier is
4.4.
FD%.
Mm-hmm.
So, just like.
Okay, to go back to the
How
beginning,
math
okay?
works.
When it said
Yeah.
you lose 2% final damage, that there is not a final damage line that you're losing, but it is 2% of all of your damage that you're doing is what you're losing there, right? That's what
Oh,
that
if
final
your
damage...
number doesn't go up 2%, then that's different. But the point of when people usually use their WSE calculator and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
what that should output, if the calculator is as useful as it appears to be, should be the equivalent in final damage percent on your stat window,
Yes.
and not a percentage increase that your damage has gone up. It should take into account the final damage you already have. Sometimes I suppose, yeah, if it doesn't already take your FD into account.
No, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But that still means that if you do X damage and you lose 2%, the equivalent of 2% final damage, because one of the sources that is not final damage is going down by 2%, and then you add 10% final damage after that change, that you're not gaining 8%, you're gaining a little bit less than that. Because you're gaining 10% of a chunk that is smaller than 100% of your total damage, which means you're gaining a little less than, you're going up a little bit less than 8. You're going up to like 107.8 or something like that.
Yeah, so it depends on what the definition of that losing that 2% final damage is. Because that 2% final damage, if it's on the left half of the equation, now you've got 0.98 times 110%.
Yeah.
If it's on the right half, you've got 100% times 108%. So it depends on what, you know what I mean? What, like, whether it's a final damage equivalency
exactly,
that's
yeah.
like
That's what I mean.
stuffed, or whether it's true final
When we
damage.
say like I gain, if someone says like, oh, a potential badge gains me 3% final damage, they mean 3% total damage basically, not the stat that's called final damage.
So what they should say is 103% of their final damage number on their stat window is how much final damage they actually gain from a 3% increase to their overall damage.
Exactly. So if you lose quote unquote 2% final damage because you're redoing your hyperstats, none of which have to do directly
then
with
you're
final
really
damage,
losing whatever.
and you're gaining
Yes,
10 because of a final damage and
Okay.
arcane power, you're actually going up 7.8 and not 8, right? Because it's
like,
98
it should
plus
depend-
9.8, so
Yeah.
107.8.
Yeah, it shouldn't
Yeah.
it shouldn't matter what your actual FD percent is because it's all multiplication. Yeah.
Okay. Glad we could figure out that I was definitely right and it's 0.2% less. And it's not as obvious as you might think, okay? But yeah, if it's a skill, like let's say the arcane power in itself is giving 2% and then no, wait, then would be the same, right?
Well, no, because then it's the actual multiplier.
Oh
that's
yeah, then
being
it's the final
applied.
multiplier that's being applied that changes, yeah.
Basically, the problem is that people describe
that'd be
final
8.
damage increases that aren't final damage increases
Yeah.
as their percentage in final damage that they aren't.
Yeah, and it also gets very confusing because once you have very, very high percentages of final damage, because people say like, oh, I did, what's it called, the skill, decent combat orders on a hero, and it's like, oh, I gained 80% final damage or something. Well, it's like you didn't gain 80% final damage, but your final damage went up by 80%, but it went from like 640 to 720 or something.
Yeah,
I
so
mean, it's like,
whatever the actual
it's a
percentage
little,
increase
it's a little
relative to
different. I mean, the
total.
number goes up a
Yeah.
lot, but it's not like somebody with 0 just gains like.
Yeah, it's
you know.
it's the difference between the reboot passive change making my BA go up like 35% and be casting Infinity and having my final damage percent go to like high 300s from
Exactly,
150. They're two totally different
Yeah,
things.
maybe. So should we just call it like total damage or something?
Or overall or whatever. I mean, it's
Yes,
not really your
wait,
final damage.
Yeah, because if
more,
we
more terms.
because it well
Well, it's your calculated damage. It's not
Yeah.
final damage is already
Yeah.
a thing in your stat window
Yeah.
that has specific sources. So like I mean, you could fix it if you just taught everybody to multiply what they
Yeah.
say as final damage to actually mean their final damage by just taking that number and multiplying it by the number in their window. Like, if you do 30% more damage than you did yesterday, if you just 1.3x your final damage percent, that's how much final damage percent you gain, functionally.
Wait, okay, so now we still have to go back to the other one because like the 10 and the 15 chain example from whatever.
Yeah, that one's different though, because
That one still
and
feels-
adding 15.
yeah.
That's not the same. You're not adding a 5% damage source to 10% final
But
damage.
there,
source.
my problem is that you are gaining 5% final damage, yes.
Yeah.
But there we are talking about the other type of final
So
damage.
you-
You're not
yeah,
gaining 5 total
you're gaining
damage.
5% final damage in your stat window, but your BA is going to go up probably between 1 and 2%, not 5%, because you don't have
No,
0
4
final
point.
damage.
It's like 4 point. Well, no, because now you are making the mistake of it being additive versus multiplicative. You're still gaining almost 5%, just a little bit. You're only gaining a little bit less efficiency than 5% on that 10% that already existed. So you're gaining 4.444 or something, or some 4.4545, something like that. Is what you should be gaining, I think.
What the heck?
Oh, because they're both the Kaiser skill. Sorry,
Yeah.
I thought one was arcane power. Okay.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. It's just like an existing skill
So if
that
they're
now gives you
both-
10. That changes to an existing.
Yeah, so you're going to go to
giving
like
15 instead, yeah.
175 instead of 170. So whatever that factors to, that should be your true damage increase. Because a lot of your final damage is still going to come from reboot passive, right?
No, it's just not just 5, because that 5 is multiplicative
Yeah.
with everything you already have.
Yeah. So it's like
Yeah, so that's the difference between your final damage increase and your damage increase.
Well, if you already have 100% final damage and you add 15, you go to 130 versus going to 120, so you gain 10%, right?
What the heck did I come?
Yeah,
back
because
to?
100 final
Yeah.
damage is really 100 plus 100 is 200% net.
Yeah. So what you
So
want
if you
to
gain 10,
so
you
so
go up
so
to
if you don't want to calculate or based on like how much you already have, you take the 10 away and you replace it by 15 instead, and that becomes your new multiplier. So your multiplier instead of 0.1 whatever becomes 1.144. Is it 14545? If you guys were, yeah, 45454545, right? So you would gain 4.545 repeating.
Yeah,
To-
you
total damage, but you would
Yeah.
gain 5% final damage. So I think therefore it might be a little bit more important actually to split those two numbers up because it's confusing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people will just like
People
do a
just say
bunch of shit to their,
5%.
they'll
but
just
that's-
do a bunch of shit to their character, and then they'll do a BA, and they'll be like, "Oh, I went up this much. This is how much FD I gained." It's like, well,
Yeah.
there's a lot of problems here, but we can start
There's
with
so
just
many
the math.
variables. Yeah. Let's start with the words you're using for things, okay? Can you do you have a list of definitions?
Oh no.
So they should just delete the final damage stat. Just don't show it to us.
Well, because they use that stat in the.
Yeah, just
formula.
delete it from the window. Just don't show us.
Yeah, I mean, it's just flexing huge numbers at this
Yeah, I
point.
guess,
What is
yeah.
the value of
Yeah.
it?
Your final
It's-
damage looking a bit low.
It's okay. People can
Yeah.
dojo what 5 times a day for as long as they want. So
Yeah.
they can do the math themselves.
The number in stat window is always irrelevant when it comes down to adding new sources. Yeah, the other thing is also like when it comes down to damage percent, there's also like a hidden 100% base in the calculations as well. So that makes it a little weird as well.
Yeah, because otherwise, like 5% damage would be worse than, you know.
Well, otherwise no
If
percent
it
damage would
wasn't
mean
105, yeah,
Yeah.
it would be bad until you hit 100.
yeah, or that means if you have no percentage damage that you would hit 0 on everything,
Yeah.
which would be a little
And
awkward.
we already know from MapleStory that you have to hit at least once.